Hi, everyone.
Awesome.
Oh, we're both on there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go go ahead, Cindy.
Um, well, Elizabeth and I are going to present today. I'm going to give you a little, just a little smidge on my background. She can do hers, and then we'll start. I also want to say that we both decided that if you do have questions about slides, feel free to ask them during the presentation. And if it's at a breaking point, we'll be happy to answer them during the presentation, or if it's something longer, maybe we'll hold it till the end. My name is Cindy Cardinal. I have been a consultant for just over 20 years, and I do audience development, audience marketing, and a lot of it lately has been building databases and helping people to simplify, update, whatever their tech stacks. I do both short-term projects, long-term projects, as well as some ongoing audience development. Um, and actually, I met Elizabeth. Elizabeth and I were introduced last year to put together a presentation for the AAMP meeting, and we actually really did a lot more on this. I mean, we rebuilt it for this one, but I'm also now on the board for the AAMP. I'm the vice president of membership. So that's me. Elizabeth, why don't you tell them your background?
Awesome. So my name is Elizabeth Kachoris. I'm the Senior Director of Digital and Data at PMMI Media Group, our business-to-business publisher based out of Chicago. And in my role, I handle all of the audience development marketing efforts, as well as being in charge of the entire digital architecture from the systems that we have in place, many of which we're going to talk about today, to my staff of custom programmers. So we do some internal development, have some proprietary software that I'm in charge of the development and maintenance of. And I've been in that role for, I don't know, 8 or 9 years. So I've been sort of through the trenches of this and hoping to offer a little bit of insight today to you all. And just to echo what Cindy said, if you've got questions, we'll monitor them throughout the presentation. And if it makes sense, we'll answer them there. Otherwise, looking forward to a discussion at the end.
Okay, so the reason that we kind of started to do this as a presentation was because it feels like we are being thrown acronyms in our roles every day. We read them, we see them, and what the heck do they all mean? I actually read something, someone must have posted like a job on their profile on LinkedIn this week, and it said something about, need to know about ABMs, KPIs, CDPs. I'm like, who knows what all those mean? I mean, if you don't, there's a lot of them. So what we're hoping to do today is to present to you and explain over 20, I will say over 25, I'll give you that hint of how many different data acronyms that are impacting audience development professionals in their jobs every day. And I want you to know that everybody's company might be in a different phase in where their technology stands right now in their database platforms. And if you look at a couple slides and you're like, we are so far from this, this is never going to be happening, that's okay. Don't let it overwhelm you. Hopefully everybody who's on this listening today will be able to come away with something they can use today that might not cost anything, that you might be able to say, I might be able to do that in 3 months or 6 months or a year. So that's what we're kind of hoping that you get out of today. We will also be showing you some real world samples, examples of things that we've done or we've seen online. And when you look at them, don't just look at what we have, think about your own organization. How can you solve a problem that maybe somebody your internal team has or a salesperson has, and try and put it into your own world and your own organization. The other thing that we're going to talk about is we hope that this will inspire you to think about your tech stack in a new way. That perhaps if you simplify things, consolidate things, you might be able to get more information about your customers. You might be able to improve engagement from your customers. An example is, as I'm working with someone now who has 2 brands, digital, online, print, and they were using about 7 different vendors, and we're just about finishing the process of consolidating down to 2 different vendors. And by doing that, what we're hoping is that they will have more knowledge about their customers and to make more revenue. And what I see, there's a question about what exactly is the tech stack. And the tech stack, if you have brands that have different components, maybe your events, maybe you use On24, maybe you use a vendor for sending out emails, a vendor for managing your manage your magazine fulfillment, a different vendor for research that you publish. Vendors, and do they tie together? Don't they tie together? Does their data go into one place, or does their data in 5 different silos and no one's talking? And by having everything talk more and communicate more, hopefully you'll have more knowledge about your customers, and hopefully you'll be able to monetize it better. And we're going to go into some different ways that you'll be able to do that.
Awesome. So let's talk first about some of these major systems. So Mark, great question about the tech stack. This is where a lot of people think about their tech stack sort of beginning with these 3 major systems. Let's talk first. If you don't know what these are, rather, like Cindy said, no problem. We're going to talk about them. We're going to talk about how they do or they don't tie together for your company, and then sort of how they're all important for your full, I'll call it a system architecture, but it's just your full picture of how your company uses technology, where the data is stored, what data might be stored in each system, which of these systems it's very important to have communicating in real or close to real time, and which of these systems, for some companies, it's okay to have sort of standalone, sort of operating on their own and not a lot of communication with the other systems. And we're going to look at how each one makes a difference in your environment and how they all have a role together. The first we're going to talk about is the CRM. So CRM stands for Customer Relationship Management. And it's really a software that was built to build better relationships between your customers, your customers of all different kinds, whether they're your advertisers or your readers. And they're a system designed to improve revenue and decrease your costs. So for many of us, this system, the CRM, is used to track your external advertisers and track sort of what they're running, what they're spending with you, and then to help your sales staff sort of predict and plan how they're going to work with your advertisers. For many of us, it's the foundation of the organization for us, because this is where we're going to know, where the revenue is coming from, what the business is doing, and we can plan for it. It's important to have buy-in when you're talking about a CRM system, whether it's one you already have or one you're putting in place. It's important to have buy-in from the top down to really reap the benefits. Otherwise, a CRM, and this I'm speaking from real personal knowledge here, a CRM can become more like a card catalog of, company names and people that work at those companies, and it doesn't really help build the business or drive the business forward. So it's important when you're working in a CRM to balance what your needs are for each of these groups of people. First of all, for your advertisers, it sounds sort of strange to talk about how an internal system for you can be built to service your advertisers. But when you think about what you know about your advertisers, and can you keep that knowledge in a CRM system instead of, in your sales team's heads or in your executive team's heads, that's where it can really help, everybody in your organization have a complete picture of your advertisers. It's also important that you look at how your customers, in this case, I'm going to call customers sort of your readers, your event attendees, registrants. It's important for a CRM to help meet their needs, because in the end, what we're trying to do is match our advertisers with our customers, right? We're trying to match those needs together. And if you can build a CRM where you can highlight the kinds of advertisers that your readers want to get in touch with to do their jobs better, right? To solve their pain points. And if you can think about that a little bit, the CRM can really be used to sort of pull those two groups together. And then finally, in a CRM, super important to have internal buy-in. I mean, most of us have put together a system, and the people at the very top just did not buy into it. They did not understand it. They didn't really have any interest in participating in it, and the system failed. So with the CRM, super important to have those C-suite, the sales team, the marketing team, all in buy-in, all understand it, all have access, be able to run the reports, be able to ask questions, and then finally to help those internal people sort of drive the course of the CRM implementation in your organization so that they can see the benefit of it and they can, figure out how to best use that technology for your group.
Okay. DMP, which is the database management platform. And we're going to talk about that before we talk about the customer data platform, because it kind of was created, which we'll talk about in a couple minutes. What the DMP does is the DMP collects mainly private and anonymous information that people, if they come to your website and they click on the ads there, this is how they kind of started, and they could capture anonymous information about people, maybe the IP address that they came from, the cookies that they had, the device, or desktop type product, and that information is useful. But what makes it even more useful is you could get counts, but not a lot of other information because it's anonymous. So what we do now is, if you have a robust platform, you can put a CTA or a call to action, which I have some examples, but I'm sure you've seen them, where if you go onto a website, you get something pop up that says, do you want to subscribe to our newsletter? Or do you want to subscribe to, sign up for this? Once they get your email address, if you have code on your system that tracks some of this anonymous information, it can change it from an unknown user to then you end up having 3 articles that they downloaded, or something that they looked at on your site and they clicked on, and you might not then know, what are they interested in? Is it research? Is it, do they buy products? Is it, depending on what your market is, it could be anything. Then you can feed that information into your CDP, which we will talk about, the customer data platform. Okay. These are just a couple examples. I know I mentioned the pop-up for a newsletter, but these are just a couple examples that I found to let you really visualize it. One was reading an article in Vanity Fair. This popped up in the middle of the article. They have gated content, and on the bottom of their screen, it would also say, if you didn't clean cookies out, like, you get 3 more articles until you have to pay, or you can log in. So this popped up in the middle of the article. The second one on the right is Fortune. And Fortune, this was actually embedded into the article, so it didn't pop up. I could just see that it was in there. And they also had gated content. And gated content doesn't have to be paid. It can be just register for it, and you get, by giving your email address, you get access to more information.
Awesome. So let's talk about the CDP. So stands for Customer Data Platform, just to define it. And it's the software, the platform, sort of the package, the suite of softwares that should provide you a complete circular 360-degree view of your audience database. So again, your customer database. It's sort of the foundation, it's the root of where all of your company's data, this is data that you're monetizing, this is what's driving your revenue, this is where the system that is sort of the heart of the matter, the center of it all. And again, what's most important is that you should be striving for a complete view of that customer in the CDP. And this is where I think Cindy was the one that started the phone call saying like, hey, if you're not there, if you don't have it all, don't stress, don't fret. Most of us are in some state of a journey towards, a desired end state. But when you think about the CDP, I'd encourage you to think about all of the events, behaviors, activities that you want to feed into your CDP. So it sort of starts in the center. We see all of those sort of head images of, these are your customers. These are the first and last names, the company names, the addresses, the phone numbers, all of that sort of data that we've been keeping in databases for years and years and years. And what's important about the CDP is that you start to, the wagon wheel here, the spokes on the wagon wheel, you start to include these behaviors and get them into your CDP. So everything from, and you'll see it on the slide here, what's happening with your email engagement, who's opening, clicking, who's getting emails, who's opting out of emails. If you have data in your CRM about how folks are interacting with advertisers, you can feed that into your CDP. If you have web forms on your website, very important to have those web form downloads feeding into your CDP, both from a behavior standpoint. It's somebody's on your website filling out a web form and they want the information that you have to share. So the behavior is important, but also data collection and data capture, making sure that you don't lose any information that you're getting about your readers. Interactions on social media, that's, sometimes new for a lot of us. So those connections are, in flux and changing, and they're also in flux and changing just because those social media companies are always changing. But important to get that information in there. Again, it's a good sign of who your readers are, what they're trying to get from you. If you're purchasing any audience development lists, it's important to get those into your customer data platform so you can deduplicate and make sure that you're not offering your things, to the same person 2 or 3 times. Direct mail lists, again, any activity on your website. So this separate from the completion of a web form. Here I'm thinking more about just, what kinds of pages are folks visiting on your website. If you have a good website taxonomy, knowing the website behavior in your customer data platform can be a really powerful tool for targeting core audiences. And, the world of marketing goes back and forth with targeting versus, blasting to everybody and their mother. But website browsing can be a really great way of targeting and talking to your advertisers and saying, hey, I'm going to put your message in front of the right people at the right time. Any third-party data you're bringing into your list or into your database rather. And then finally, anything that's happening, on the in a mobile device, and then any sort of traditional audience development work. So again, if you're not there, you don't have everything in the customer data platform, then fine. But which would be the most beneficial, which might drive the most information that you could begin to make decisions about? For a lot of people, this begins with email, what's happening with their emails so that they make sure that they're not obviously canned spam. We can't continue to send emails to folks that have opted out. We've all been doing that for years and years. But if you can set a program, and we're going to give some examples of this, where you can offer different messages to different people based on what they're doing, how they're interacting with your email, or what's going on in their social media feed. So there we go.
Okay, so when you're feeding all of that information into your CDP, where are you getting all this data? And I think one of the important things about data, and we touch on this a couple times, is that there's a lot of information out there, but you need to look at what information is going to be valuable for your internal teams as well as your advertisers. You have to kind of balance what you're asking for, what you're giving, and what people need. But do remember that the more usable information that you have, the more valuable that you become to advertisers. And do you have some type of data component that no one else has? If you can do that, that definitely makes you stand out from the crowd, because we all have competition these days. So you can get data from a number of sources now. First-party data is just that product, somebody filling out a form for a certain, let's say a magazine, that they give you maybe their areas of interest, their title, their business. That is for that area, that product alone. You have second-party data, and although we've been doing this, I swear the term second-party data, I've only been hearing it in the last couple of years, but that might be from a sister brand, a sister product. Maybe they have for Jane Smith a title, and your brand doesn't have it, and you can append that information over. It's a lot easier with technology now, and the platforms that are out there, they can make it a lot easier to do that than even 4 or 5 years ago. And the other thing is, you don't have to collect everything yourself. There's a lot of places where you can get third-party data, which is data that you append from an outside source. You might be able to, if you're in retail, append a number of stores, square footage per store. If you're a hospital, you might be able to append things like how many beds are in a hospital. The advantage of doing it from outside is that it might be more consistent on your records and perhaps more accurate. There's a lot of information, and if you have a big enough database and you can perhaps append maybe some psychographic information like hobbies or income, you might open yourself up to a new advertising market that you didn't have before. Go to the next one, Elizabeth.
Yep.
These were just a couple examples of missing data, and just because you don't have it doesn't mean you can't get it. With technology today, you can do a lot more. Like the one on the left might be maybe you're targeting people that you want to know more about their areas of interest. So for this sample on the left, you're going into people, you're sending them an email, and you're trying to offer them something, but you're not asking them everything. You already know their name and their title. You just want them to say, get my PDF. Sometimes you can download it. Sometimes you just have to answer that one question to give that missing piece of information. And the one on the right is if you have somebody that's like Pro Food World newsletter subscriber, it's really more offering another product, but popping up, are you a subscriber? Because maybe that will get you a new subscriber and allow some cross promotion. We're going to talk next. Elizabeth is going to talk about setting up marketing journeys, which is kind of a big, seems like a phrase I'm hearing a lot of these days. But there's a lot of testing we can do in with today's technology, setting up different offers, different formats, different colors, that different copy to send a message to someone to see what works best for your market to get that missing data.
Yeah, great. So like Cindy said, marketing journeys. We hear about them all the time. We've often heard about them, for our advertisers, they might be asking about them, but I'm going to encourage you to think about using this kind of an approach for internal purposes also. So once you build an audience, so again, going back to that CDP, full picture of your audience, like Cindy said, tying together that first party data, you might know from a sister brand, and then what you might be appending from data vendors, you can pull together an audience, a very specific audience. And then this is just an example of a marketing journey. It's actually just a piece of a marketing journey that I have currently running to drive magazine subscriptions. And so to the left there with that purple box, I'm pulling in new names to the database. I'm deciding that those names are my desired names. So I'm not going to send this out to everybody and their mother. I'm just going to send it to folks who have met a certain set of criteria. And then the two tracks after the yellow sort of triangle, or not triangle, but diamond shape there. Yeah, so you see two tracks, like Cindy alluded to. I'm big on testing because many of us have been doing this for a really long time, and we may have some preconceived notions about what works and what doesn't work. You know, maybe something worked 2 or 3 years ago. Maybe, you know, we've always done it this way, but we're in a huge testing mode at PMMI. And in this example, the one that I pulled for you, I'm simply testing whether an HTML message, so with a pretty picture and that red, you know, download now, get my PDF, whatever your button is going to say, that a pretty HTML email versus a simpler text email, which is got no images, no pictures, and it just sort of gets to the point. So I'm just going to divide that audience basically in half and say, hey, send half this HTML and half the text version. Some examples of other things I've been testing. I test subject lines a lot. So we've been testing emojis and subject lines. We've seen that happening. I'm in the B2B space, but we see emojis and text in subject lines rather a lot of times in the B2C world. So we tested that. We tested what I called like humorous copy, which is sort of like a you know, sort of a cuter take on it than the more business approach that we normally take, which is like, hey, get the important articles to solve your business problems. And then we tested like a humorous copy that said, don't miss out, you know, sort of cheekier copy. We tested that. So in this case, I'm testing HTML and text. And then I send that first email, that first blue sort of envelope box. And then I wait a couple of days. And then if they don't respond, I'll send another email. If they do respond in those red circles, I'm going to pull them out of the journey, right? Because if they respond to the first email and they become, in this case, a subscriber to my magazine, I don't want to keep bombarding them, right? Now I've got them as a subscriber, and I hope that they just engage with my editorial content. And then the other reason I chose this as an example, and you know, you can sort of see the emails continue if you don't subscribe, but I'm also, with that fingerprint, I'm also taking the folks on the HTML path, I'm taking them on a journey to social media. That's what that little fingerprint is. I'm taking them and I'm going to serve up an ad for my magazine to this specific audience targeted over, in this case, in Facebook. We thought for years Facebook wouldn't be a tool for us because we are B2B. We thought folks are on Facebook to share family vacation pictures and, you know, kids' birthdays, but we're finding a huge engagement on Facebook, and we're seeing actually a lot of traffic coming to our site from Facebook, and we're seeing a lot of conversions for both ourselves and our advertisers. We're doing retargeting campaigns for our advertisers on Facebook. We're seeing a lot of success using Facebook. So this is just, again, an example. It's a piece of a larger journey, but encouraging you to think about using the information you have on your readers in your internal CDP and putting them through a marketing journey like this. It's important to, again, sort of think outside of the box and not imagine that as just a solution for your advertisers, but as a solution for renewals, subscriptions, opt-ins. Cindy mentioned the missing data campaigns just to get more of that data that you can monetize. Another example here, this is more of an external sort of marketing campaign that was run. And the key here is just the idea that we're going to feed everything into that CDP, using that same image of the CDP with sort of the heads there. We're going to drive folks from all different platforms, from our website, through our emails, by posting on social media. We're going to drive any activity, so any engagement with those through our CDP, and of course, any confirmed reservation. So this happens to be one, these examples that I pulled were for an event they needed to register for, but it could be any other myriad of examples of things you're trying to get folks to do. And you can use the fact that they, maybe they opened the email, but they didn't click, or they clicked on the email, but then they didn't actually, register in that example. And if you have that data in your CDP, you can start to make decisions, be really smart about offering the right audience, the right messaging at the right time in an attempt to get them to convert, to do what you want them to do. Lastly, in this sort of discussion about marketing journeys, these are some paid subscriber examples. So in this case, House Beautiful, they're going to send you a lovely invoice here on the left that says your 1-year subscription is due. Thanks for your attention. And then somebody at House Beautiful is going to decide that after a certain amount of time, they're now going to send you a similar message, but with that red text, sort of a little bit more urgent, and draw your attention to their messaging, a little bit more. This would be a great example, I would suggest, for testing the different kinds of, ways to present this to your audience. You could update that invoice, pay now. You could update that to lots of different things to see what would get people to pay, in this case, at the time you want them to. Again, just some examples here of a journey we're taking on so for renewals. So for folks that are already engaged in our products, but we want to make sure that we get their updated information, we're going to send this email to the left here, and then the pop-up on the right-hand side there, again, is targeted specifically to folks we know on that website need to renew their subscription. So not everybody is seeing that, only the folks that we know need to see it.
Okay, so now you have all this data in your database. So now we have to monetize it, especially if you have mostly controlled brands or free products that people aren't paying for. So there's definitely different types of leads that are going to help us, that we can provide to advertisers. It seems to me that my experience is that a lot of advertisers today, if it's an online product especially, they might be, if you're marketing online, they're looking for a certain number of leads and a certain demographic. So let's just talk about a couple different kinds of leads that seem to pop up on a regular basis. So the first are MQLs, and these are marketing qualified leads. They have shown an interest in the brand or in the offering by the advertiser. So you could turn those over. Those are warm leads, but then we go to the next type of lead, which is actually an SQL, or a sales qualified lead. And for these, they've been further vetted by your internal marketing and sales department that they're appropriate for whatever's being sold. And your advertisers should be paying more for SQLs than for MQLs, because you're handing them what should be a pretty darn hot lead for them to be able to convert to a sale. And then there's another type of lead, and this doesn't really, to me, this wasn't like a funnel. The first two are a funnel. This is just a different type of lead that in the last couple years, I definitely have had people say, oh, they would like BANT leads. The term isn't new, but it seems to have resurfaced And what BANT leads is it's people that you can identify by budget, which is how much do they have to spend? Can they even afford your product? Authority, who's involved in the final purchase decision? Are there other influencers? Their needs, what is the basic problem that they're trying to solve? And timing, what is their timeline, time frame? When is the time that they need it? To be able to provide these kind of leads, I think that you need to have either a pretty big database or a deep database or really involved customers, because you might be asking for multiple people within that organization and you need a lot of information about them. And then there's another type of program, which is account-based marketing, ABM, or account-based marketing. And what this really is, it's a methodology where you take a targeted list of prospects when you give them focused, personalized messages. It's not the throw the spaghetti at the wall type thing. In the last couple of years, I keep hearing salespeople or C-suite people, we have to do ABM, we have to offer ABM. But when I ask the questions, do you know what it is? Well, no, I just know we have to offer it. Our advertisers are asking for it. Do you know what type of product they're trying to sell? No, we just need to do it. They read about it, heard about it from an advertiser, heard about it at an industry meeting, don't really understand it. Don't think it does not work with all types of sales. Here are times to consider using it. If it's a longer sales cycle, because we're going to have kind of the marketing journey of the messages to target these people. If it's a group decision, and this also falls in a little bit with the BANT leads, and higher product purchase price. Again, this is something, and we're going to talk about how to set up an ABM program. But what happens is I should just go to the next slide. But what I was going to say is that I'm finding, I just read an article not that long ago where someone said, shouldn't we be considering all B2B ad sales programs, ABM programs? Because the ABM really did start more in the B2B space than the B2C space. I'm not quite sure that people are ready to go to this detail for all their products to, go through these steps that we're going to talk about. I'll be interested to see what happens in the next couple of years, or if they're saying they're calling it ABM when it really isn't ABM. So what you actually do in an ABM program is you have to build the exact internal list that you're going to target. Now, you can either build that internally, come up with a certain segment of your file, who you're going to target. You can also work with your internal marketing or sales team to help build that if you don't have the right names. You can also purchase lists from outside, places like Bombora that might, companies like Bombora that measure intent, but maybe don't have the right people attached. You can buy leads from other companies, and then you can target all of those. You can also perhaps reach out to your advertiser to find out if they have some leads that you can use, but they may not have content to provide to them. So by partnering together, you're coming up with a better list for them to reach. Once you have that list, then you're going to set your measurement goals. How are you going to measure this program? We're going to talk about these in a couple minutes, some ways that you can measure different programs, both externally and even internally within departments. And perhaps it's more than just a number of leads. And then you create kind of the marketing journey that Elizabeth talked about. And it doesn't just include, perhaps it might not include just email. It might include telemarketing or social media to try and get these very specific leads that people are looking for. Usually you want something with a bigger purchase price, like maybe a tech platform or a large piece of equipment that multiple people are going to be influencing those decisions.
Yeah, and just to tack on to what Cindy said, I think it's very important when you're talking about a true ABM campaign versus just calling all sort of marketing, an ABM campaign, to think about the content that you need to run an ABM campaign. It's not just your general content. You need really specific content targeted towards the audience that you're trying to pull through this campaign, and then also that will show your, advertisers in the light that they want to be shown in. So sometimes, you can get the list and you can say, okay, we want a certain number of a certain type of lead, but it's in the creation of that journey and the creation of like, how are you gonna get the right people into the campaign that's important to think about what you're going to offer them. What content do you have that will solve their problem enough that they want to be pulled into this journey? Because consumers, whether it's B2C or B2B, it doesn't matter. We're all consumers of the data, so we're all really smart now, right? We know these things. So you have to be smart in what you're offering to them as a part of an ABM campaign. Okay, KPI. This was in that example that Cindy used in the beginning of it, in the beginning of the presentation. It stands for key performance indicators, and it's really quantifiable tools, so things you can really measure about how either a campaign or your business or a product is doing. It can be everything from, how quickly you're servicing something to just more hard, dollar and revenue costs. So just doing a quick search on KPI, you have a lot of options. You can really think about, being creative in how you're measuring things. So some of these that we've obviously all heard profitability. So measuring things on how profitable they are. But some new ones that you might not have heard about, customer churn rate. So at which rate are you losing existing customers and therefore you need to replace them? Customer acquisition cost. How much does it cost you to get a new customer or a new person into your database? And then sort of the flip side of that is, what's the lifetime value of somebody that you have in your database, an engaged person in your database? So lots of data can go into calculating that lifetime value, that LTV. So then we're going to talk a little bit about cost per lead, so CCL, which is just the cost per click or lead. CPO, cost per order. PPC, pay per click. PPL, pay per lead. CPM, which is something that we see a lot of times on bills and things, and was confusing to me for years, and I had to look it up for years. It's just how much it's going to cost per thousand of something. So in this example, we've used impressions, but it could be per thousand. If you're talking about a third-party data agreement, it could be per thousand emails or per thousand SIC numbers that you're buying. So CPM, and then a VTC, which is stands for view through click, which is somebody that's going to watch a video and then click through. So these are all different ways that you could look at a campaign or look within your advertisers or even in your internal structures, going back to the information that you're keeping in your CRM. These would be some examples of reports that you could generate for a C-suite member that says, here's the profitability of a particular product, and you could make some decisions about whether to keep that product live or not. If you're talking about an ABM campaign, you can say, okay, we're going to price this ABM campaign at a cost per click, or we're going to price it at a cost per lead. Like, what's the goal of the ABM campaign? And particularly important to think about these KPIs. We go back to the different types of leads that Cindy mentioned, marketing qualified, sales qualified, or BANT leads. All of these would have, of course, a different cost per lead, and you'd want to be smart about how you're doing that. And maybe if you're bringing people through an ABM campaign and you get a certain number of marketing qualified leads, they're a particular cost per lead, and sales qualified could be a slightly higher price. I think Cindy mentioned that.
Okay, I think it's also really important for us to remember that the customer experience matters. And that sounds really basic maybe, but I think a lot of times we derive our marketing messages, the way we lay out our website, from the inside out, looking how we want to do it, what makes sense to us, rather than looking at it from the customer viewpoint. So again, I'm going to go kind of what I think is a little funnel of customer experience. So the first one is UX, which is user experience design. And that starts with firms that create usable and satisfying products that are designed with the customer in mind. So this isn't just an online thing. This is your whole experience with a company. So think of companies, larger companies I think of that do great, good products, good design, and try and make every experience positive. Might be Apple or Disney. And actually, I just read an article this morning in Fast Company. They were talking about that the top 40 out of 100 companies, like in the last 5 years, have hired a like chief design officer. Don't really know what to do with them yet, some of them. But one of the really good examples that I don't know if you've read in the articles about Logitech, who designs a lot of the computer mouses and the keyboards. They've completely redesigned them within the last couple years with the customer in mind, with people who use those tools all the time, and they've quadrupled their profits, their sales in 4 years. Part of that is because they're designing products that people want, but also the way that they've created them and their interaction with the customers is very positive. It can also include even going to a restaurant and talking to customer service. So the next thing is kind of the UI, which is the user interface design. And this is how people interact with the buttons, the screens, the touch screens, the lights, the keyboards. If you're a company that might offer like dashboards on there, how is the experience from the customer's viewpoint when you are interacting with a company? Are you looking when you create your website or a dashboard that your customer uses, yeah, this looks good to us, but does it look good for your customers? Because we all have competition, and having a good experience and a brand ambassador, it doesn't matter what you're selling, having somebody saying positive about you and your company is really, really can really help you. And the other thing is, this comes even a little more narrow, and that's the GUI, which is this is where people select from icons within the screen. Now, are the graphics on there? A lot of people are using the graphics on their screen. Can people figure out what they are? Are they large enough that people can see them? Those kind of things. And then, do you want to go to the next one? So this seems really basic to me, but it's important to look when you create an online product that you look at the customer's online experience. And how does it look on, is it mobile optimized? Does it optimized also if you have it on some kind of, the reason that I'm amazed every couple phone, and I'm like, how is this not optimized? Like big companies, so many people are looking on their phone to get information that you really need to be optimized. And there's some services, I think Email on Acid, a couple other places, you can send samples and see what it looks, see how it renders in different types of screens. Okay. And then the last thing we're going to touch on briefly is privacy. You cannot be a marketer today without knowing about privacy. And I don't care, your whole organization really needs to know about privacy, especially on the email side, but on other sides, using other forms of messaging as well, because it feels like the laws are changing all the time for how we market. And if you have events and they're marketing a product, they need to know the privacy laws. You need to set up your forms so that you're collecting the right information. If somebody lives outside the US, you may have to ask them a different question to opt in or opt out of getting future emails. So these are just a couple examples of them. The first was the one in the US, which was CAN spam. And I'm just curious, do you guys actually know what this stands for? Because I didn't. It actually stands for Controlling the Assault of Non-Solicited Pornography and Marketing. I had no idea that's what the law is. I've called it canned spam for years, but did not know that's what it stood for. The newest one is from the state of California, and this is the California Consumer Privacy Act, just started in January. And realistically, we could end up having, I hope not, 50 laws in 50 states if everybody does things differently. The CASA laws, which are the Canadian anti-spam laws, those took place in July of 2014. GDPR, which are the EU privacy laws. And I'm sure, I don't remember the name, but I think now after Brexit that the UK will have its own, but it's pretty similar, what I initially heard, to GDPR. Australia has a Spam Act. If you're calling, I think this impacts consumer more, but you have the DNC, the do not call list. You have DMA choice, which is kind of the do not mail list. And just know there's at least 28 different country email privacy laws. So there's a lot to learn, and I think it's important. I've actually gone in and give presentations to companies. I'm not a privacy expert, but to go in and talk to them about the different laws, because it really does impact your whole organization.
Absolutely. And just, I'm dealing with this, as we all are. And I think what's important to note here, we talked in some of these other slides, about the buy-in from the top down. And it's really important, that your executives and the folks sort of in that top, layer of your organizations understand the impact that these privacy laws are going to have on your business. And like Cindy said, canned spam has been around for so long, and we all get that we can't email to folks that opt out of our emails. And many of us have stopped emailing folks that haven't opted into our emails. But these new laws, CCPA, what's going to happen with all these different states, it's going to majorly impact our business. And we don't even know how all those, what all those impacts are going to be yet. So it's just important, if you don't have somebody at the top of your organization that at least understands, that these laws are coming, that you get in front of them and just mention these things, if this is a part of your job. And if it's not a part of your job, there should be somebody in your organization who is the go-to privacy person, even if all they do is call the attorney, because most of us have had to pay lots of legal fees to understand how these laws are going to impact our business. So again, key takeaway from today is, if you don't know who your privacy person is, find out who it is, and make a relationship with them, because if you're in data at all, you're going to need to understand these laws.
Okay, does anyone know, this is your test for the day. Does anyone know how many marketing terms we explained today? 32. Any other questions? We could cover on each of those topics. Feel free to pop any up there, or you can always shoot us an email later, or reach out on LinkedIn and ask a question, to either of us, I'm sure. But if you have any other questions now about anything we talked about, feel free to list them.
Thank you both so much. This was amazing. I wasn't counting as we went, but I'm shocked by that number of 32 at the end. And I don't see any questions in the chat box. I'll give folks a few more minutes to think of things. Oh, you got some kudos from Lisa. Okay. Well, as I said in the beginning of the webinar, we will have the recording available, as well as any other materials that the presenters want to share. So stay tuned for that on the website, and we'll send out an email as well once we've got everything situated. But thank you all so much for coming, and thank you again, Elizabeth and Cindy. This was really, really informative, and I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah. Well, everybody have a good rest of your week. And thanks for having us.
Awesome. Thank you both so much. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.